Okay, so you might want to fill that in. What is a resourceful belief? And you might want to find a limiting belief. Limiting belief might be something like, I can't do such and such a behavior. I can't lose weight. I can't, whatever happens to be. How do you know that? Well, I've done it so many times. I've tried so many things and nothing's worked. Well, what's made that happen? Oh, it must be my childhood upbringing, or it could be my genetics or something. So kind of fill in for yourself on a positive and a negative side. Now, what I'd like to do is to just rehearse through this a couple times using some examples from the group and show it's a real simple procedure. You're just going to say, when the person gives the belief statement, you ask two simple questions. Number one is, how do you know that? So here, for people, we usually start with the belief, the generalization. I'm a successful person, or I'm a limited person, or whatever. You want to say, how do you know that? That's question number one. Question number two is, what makes it that way? By the way, you'll notice that I can ask this cause question about, well, what makes this evidence happen, or what makes both of these? And I think you want to be asking about both of them. So in other words, if somebody says, I'm a slow learner because I do poorly on my tests, you'd want to say, well, what makes this happen? What makes you a slow learner so that you do poorly on your tests? Rather than just what makes you do poorly on your tests. You can ask the cause-effect question about either one, about this or this. But usually you want to know about the relationship. What makes this relationship? So let's put a couple of content examples on here. Who has a resourceful belief about themselves? No hands? Wait a minute. Yeah.
I believe that I'm very good at healing people.
Okay, so he says, I believe I'm good at healing people. How do you know that? What's your evidence?
So by doing it, see my results.
Okay, so by seeing your results. So he says, I have this particular things that I've seen. Results. What makes you that way? What makes you a good healer so you can get those results?
Because I care about what I'm doing.
Okay. So this becomes, see, here's an interesting thing you find, I think, in just gathering information. And by the way, I do a lot of work in terms of eliciting beliefs from people who are successful. For example, beliefs from people who are successful in healing themselves. I'm going to be doing a whole program in May where we're going to be taking people who are in their 80s and 90s, maybe even hundreds, and eliciting from them their beliefs and their strategies for how they have, by the way, these people that will still be vital, taking care of themselves, living on their own. Find out, well, what are their beliefs about the world? What are their strategies? And this becomes an interesting way to start to gather information about that. Because what I hear him saying is this. Because I care about people, I do things that allows me to see this result. And that means I'm a good healer. I think that's a very different thing than if he said, because I'm a good technician, I can make these things happen and be a good healer. So what seems to me to be interesting about this belief, about Oliver's belief, is that caring is the cause of being a good healer, not being an exquisite technician. And I think that becomes a significant statement. That's a significant piece of information to it. Okay. Who else has a positive belief about himself? Yeah.
I believe that in looking for what's positive in situations, I increase the probability of feeling positive about the world and myself, and subsequently feel successful.
Okay, now, we don't even have to ask her anything because she laid the whole thing out. She says, I believe that in thinking positively about situations and exploring choices, that creates this opportunity in the world, and that means success. So actually, she's already defined a complete belief statement. Who has one? Well, let's take one more as an example. Yes.
I believe that my body is a reflection of my thoughts.
Okay. He says, I believe that my body is a reflection of my thoughts. How do you know that? And by the way, see, her response here is, of course, interesting because sometimes you won't know. Meaning, filling in this information can be really valid in helping you to support that belief. In other words, it starts to solidify the belief even more fully.
Because of experience, positive and negative.
Okay, so because in the past when you've related the two together, you've been able to find a relationship. What makes it be that way? What makes the body be a reflection of the mind?
I'm going to say I don't know.
Okay, so she says, I don't know. What this tells me is this would be a real interesting place if you wanted to solidify that belief. See, think about it this way. If I want to install a resourceful belief in somebody, whether it's regarding health or whether it's regarding business, whether it's regarding education, how am I going to do it? If I say to somebody, here's a positive belief that you should have. Your body reflects what happens in your mind. And they say, well, what makes it be that way? And you go, well, of course, I mean, I'm sure that you have it intuitively, that you know that. But what I'm saying is that by languaging it, by putting it into language, it also makes it that much more powerful a way to build that belief in somebody else. And that this becomes an important part of, if you want to influence beliefs of other people, you want to be able to support it with these two. You want to be able to back up this end result with these two things here. So that might be an interesting thing for you to explore. That would tell me, in terms of eliciting a positive belief, what might be an area that you would want to think about. And it might give you, and you could say, well, because of the principles of psychoneuroimmunology, that's how I know that, and come up with some reason for it. So you might find, and by the way, the purpose of this exercise is you might find that you can't answer one of these questions. But that tells you information, and it tells you, number one, if you want to install the belief, where to go to strengthen it. And number two, if we take limiting beliefs for a moment, where might be our first point of approach on that? Let's take a limiting belief. Does anyone have a belief that you like to change? Or the client has.
Okay, I'm not very organized. He's organized.
So I'm a disorganized person. He says, or I'm not very organized. How do you know that?
I don't have a lot of interest in being organized.
So you don't, because I'm not an organized person because I don't have interest in it. Now notice, that's real different than when he said, I know I'm a good healer because I have specific examples from the past. We have a different evidence procedure here. What makes you be that way? What makes you not have interest in being this way?
Well, I believe that I'm beginning to believe less of it. It's kind of a limiting. You're so involved in the organization, you can't let your mind expand and create.
Okay, so what he says is, the thing that limits him is that he believes that if he's concerned with organization, he can't be creative. In other words, you can't be creative and well organized too, which causes him to be uninterested in it, which means he's not an organized person. So that tells us some interesting places to go in which we can start to leverage a change in this belief. Because that starts to tell us, aha, here are some places that we might be able to start to shift around, because this belief is actually caused by another belief.